It always amazes me that contact improvisation happens in so many parts of the world. I'm here in Istanbul, I'm overlooking the Bosphorus, and we just finished a workshop. And here I'll put a photo up of how at the end of the workshop we were floating on air. So decades ago, when I used to go to jams, I still go to jams, but I had this score I would take with me, which is if I was ever sitting on the edge, I would grab my journal and hold it in my lap, and as I was watching dances, if I got completely arrested by a dance, I would pull myself out and pull out my journal and articulate what it was about the dance that completely pulled me unselfconsciously into observing it. And I noticed a lot of things that often when people shared a plumb line, it would pull me in. If people were willing to fall off balance together and enter motions where they did not know how it would resolve, I would be completely pulled in. I loved watching men roughhousing together. I loved watching women roughhousing together. And over about 12 years of this score at jams, I ended up with that many journals, with 12 journals, filled with the moments that completely pulled in my attention. And that, in turn, gave me questions that I wanted to engage in my dancing. How do I get more of this in my dancing? Which, in turn, became material for teaching. And that thing that all of us contact teachers do is that we try to make people our ideal contact partners in the dancing. And one thing I really noticed over those 12 years is that if there was music playing in the room, I very rarely got arrested by people's dancing. That somehow music took something away from the dancing that I found interesting. I noticed often that, of course, driving music really took people out of their connection and put the connection into the rhythm. But I also noticed that soundscapes, those mellow soundscapes, often puts a lid on the energy in the room, and people can't break out. It's like the ceiling gets lowered by a soundscape in the room. I find music incredible to investigate the form, and I often use it as a pattern breaker with my more advanced students. I will never use music with beginning students. So while I think music's a great thing to investigate, if it becomes a regular fare at a jam, I think it actually hurts the ability to connect, that ability of two people to find their own rhythm that is different than all the other rhythms in the room, except connected to all the other rhythms in the room. Music is a little bit like alcohol when you're socializing. It lubricates the situation, and it's wonderful that way. But if you need music every time you if you need alcohol every time you socialize, there's a problem with it. And I think it's the same thing is true with music at jams. If you have to have music at your jams, there's an issue there. It's like needing alcohol to socialize. So a lot of places use music really regularly in their jams, especially in Europe. And so I have a little technique for getting out of the music crush. And that is, at the jam, to create what I call witness stations. And they're marked areas in the room, and some of them might be big enough to include a bench with room for people to sit in front. Some might be just big enough for one person. And you mark this with beautiful things, with flowers, with candles. Recently, we've been using mandarin oranges so that people can eat the oranges as they're witnessing. You might put a journal there, or pens, things for people to make art. But it's just very clear that these are areas to be in the act of witnessing the dance. And this focuses the room. And if you have a jam that particularly uses music all the time, or a very chatty jam, this can help make all the people who are witnessing become aware of their witnessing. So we just did this in Barcelona last week. And we put a little sign at the front door because we did it with lemons there. And there was a sign there with an eye looking at dances, and we put lemons around it right inside the door so that when people saw the spaces in the room, they knew what they were for. It didn't have to be explained. And this jam that often uses music was a 3-hour jam. There was not an excess word said around the room for 3 hours. It was extraordinary what happened, the focus in that room. So this is my rant about music at jams, because I actually think a regular diet of it can hurt the dancing and hurt the investigation, where there's so much potential just in that interaction between two people, those two people interacting with the room full of dancers. We don't need music all the time. So try a focus jam with these witness stations and see what happens to your jam. So from Istanbul, thank you for joining me. I'll see you somewhere along the way. Bye-bye.